One of my interests in the world is France and Germany and Europe in the world. I think that France and Germany are very important in Europe, with Europe in the world. And in particular, I think France is doing a lot in the world. It seems to be very involved in the world. I think it has an eye on America, perhaps a greedy eye, I'm not sure, but it has an eye on America at the moment. It's involved in the American presidential elections. I think it's been involved in American politics for perhaps 2 to 3 years. 2 to 3 years. I think it's been interfering with its election. I think that's why we have maybe a popular Kamala Harris when she was perhaps unknown as perhaps maybe a presidential candidate. I think she is pretty much unknown as a presidential candidate. I don't think she's very strong in the Democrat Party. I don't think she was very well regarded or known to be perhaps a presidential candidate for a presidential election. And now she seems to be leading the Democrat Party, and perhaps she could become the next Black president of America. So I think France has perhaps interfered with that and has perhaps introduced its own view of perhaps black people with the civil rights movement of America. I think it has played some part in this, and I think there is public information about this because it's been doing this very publicly. I think France has been doing this very publicly. So I think that France has been involved in American politics. It seems to be reasonably influential because it seems to be very strong there. But I think with France in Europe, I think the main interest with France in the world is French Indochina. I think that France is very interested in French Indochina. I think it's building India into an economic power in the world because of French Indochina and its historical relations with French Indochina, perhaps during the 1950s, 60s or 70s. And I think the same applies with China. It's been building China into an economic power as well because France might have some kind of interest with French Indochina. I think France is very interested in Algeria. It's been interested in Algeria for 100 years or 150 years. So I think because of this French, I don't know why they have an interest in Algeria. Algeria is pretty much finished. It doesn't have much in Algeria. It has a little bit of oil. That's why the French could be interested in Algeria. But I think the world is not very interested in Algeria, but France is very interested in Algeria. And I think that's why we have an issue with French Indochina in the world, China in the world, and perhaps India in the world. So I think that France does have an interest in Algeria, and I think it's invested a lot in Algeria. So I think that's one of France's foreign policies in the world, and that's why its presence looks like the way it does, because it has an interest in Algeria. So we have issues with Egypt and the Muslim Brotherhood. I think France is involved with that, and America as well. I think France thinks America is too powerful in the world, so there could be an issue there. And I think that it's built India and China up as well. So I think that France is playing a big role in the world, whereas usually it kind of concerns itself with its own domestic French affairs. That's what France does usually. But I think we've had presidents like Sarkozy, President Holland, and now President Macron, those are three American presidents. I think the American puppet presidents for France, and they've kind of changed the whole domestic kind of condition of France and its relations with Europe, all over Europe, and perhaps its position and interest in developing the European Union. So I think those American presidents have played a very influential and important role in France. I think they've made France into what it is today as a modern France in the world. I think if you look at before Sarkozy, Hollande and Macron, I think France was a very different place in the world. It was more safe, healthy and accepted in the world as perhaps an equal partner. I think it didn't concern itself with too many issues in the world, just its own domestic rights and freedoms within France, Europe and the European Union. I think those were its main interests. But I do think France has changed now because of these presidents, President Sarkozy, President Hollande and President Macron. I think it's changed its relationship with Germany as well, and that's fundamental for how Europe is in the world, French and German relations. So I think that Germany is also important. And I think when you look at Germany in Europe, it's also kind of come under similar conditions to France in the world. It seems to be in some kind of duress and pressure and some kind of domestic duress. I think with Germany, we've had Merkel, who's been very powerful in Europe. I think she's built Europe into maybe a Christian world. I think she's built Europe into a Christian Europe, and now we have Schulz as well, and I think Schulz is very much interested in China in the world. I think that's what Schulz wants, German-China relations, perhaps within Europe and the European Union, but in the world as well. So I think that Schulz is very important for Germany. It's distancing itself from maybe France and kind of focusing on how Europe is engaging with the rest of the world outside of America and Canada and Australia and South America. I think that Germany is looking to the rest of the world now because of Schulz, maybe China as a superpower, and it's looking to perhaps maybe look at its engagement with Asia. So I think Germany is also changing within Europe. It's not so much a traditional Germany in Europe before. I think that it's kind of like modernizing itself with the rest of the world, in particular China and Asia. So I think that's what Schulz is doing. So I think that when you look at France and Germany, which dominate Europe in the world, we've kind of lost half of the European Union. I think if you look at how the European Union was, it was very strong, but we've lost Spain in the European Union, Greece in the European Union, and Great Britain in the European Union. And that could perhaps suggest that the European Union can only survive with strong members rather than all members, including perhaps weak members. So I think the European Union is going through some kind of difficult time as well because of France-German relations. And I think that with that we could have also lost half of the euro currency. If you look at the euro now, it seems to be very weak, perhaps the weakest it's been in its history. So I think the euro is very weak as well. And I think this is very important because I think Europe is going through a lot of changes in the world, especially with the 4-year Ukraine war. So we have that kind of dangerous element in Europe. Europe has some kind of 4-year Ukraine war and an Eastern European war, and that could have issues with perhaps antagonizing Russia in Europe. So I think that there are some issues with Europe at the moment that are perhaps not friendly or healthy in the world. So that's my interest with France and Germany in Europe. Thank you.